Hello and welcome. This is from TB Daily News. I will leave the link in the description below. It is nicely number 420. Canton Cover-Up, part 420. Good job, Aiden. All right. Adam Lally, new grand jury failed to indict Karen Reed on conspiracy charges with Turtle Boy before filing motion to prevent Turtle Boy from courtroom. And it was uploaded yesterday. It reads, earlier in the week, Ted Daniels reporting confirmed what we reported several months ago. A grand jury was convened by Ken Mello on March 27 that tried to indict Karen Reed and Turtle Boy for conspiracy to commit witness intimidation, and no charges were filed because they did not probable cause. And I believe he meant to write they did not have probable cause. And then he provides a screenshot from Boston 25 News. An attempt to add more criminal charges to Karen Reed and Aiden Kearney, the Massachusetts blogger known as Turtle Boy, failed earlier this year. 25 investigates, grand jury blocked new charges against Karen Reed. And the blog continues, this despite the fact that blue check-marked idiots on the side of the cop killers insisted that Karen and I were still under investigation. And Aiden provides a screenshot from Missy Lurch, her ex-account, Twitter account, whatever. It reads, June 29, 2024, this is what Karen is being investigated for, in addition to her murder charges for those who have asked, hashtag Karen Reed, hashtag justice for John O'Keefe. And can't really read it because when I zoom in it just gets blurry. And in response, Beth wrote, the grand jury decided that there was not enough evidence to indict her on this. And look at Missy's response. False. So Beth tried to come at Missy with the truth, and Missy deflected the truth. And that's exactly what a lot of Karen Reed haters do. They deflect the truth when you give them the truth. When you give them evidence, when you give them documents, when you give them statements that state police themselves provided and that Adam Lally himself provided, they still deflect it because they don't want to do what's right. They just want to be right. I have said this over and over again. The Karen Reed haters, they don't want to do what is right, what is accurate, what is factually correct. They just want to be right. They are all up in their egos. And again, they're doing this as if it's a sports event. They chose a team and they just want to win. They don't really care about the principle behind it. They're not really out for the truth. They just want to be part of a team of hatred that goes nowhere. But and it just goes in it circles around a falsehood that Karen Reed is somehow guilty of this, even though she's been disproven. Her involvement in this at all has been completely and entirely disproven. It wasn't her. But they don't care. They just want to be right. They don't want to do what's right. Missy posted, I never said she's been indicted yet. What you stated about the grand jury is false. Again, Missy doesn't want to do what's right. She just wants to be right. Missy doesn't want to know her shit. She just wants to be right. She wants to stand correct. It's shitty. I've seen it over and over again from the Karen Reed haters. It's their formula, you know. They all, I don't know, birds of a feather, I guess. Another post that Aiden provided. I'm gonna skip to the next one. Okay. It reads, from Jennifer Coffin Daffer. Coffin Daffer. Hashtag Justice for John O'Keefe. At Julie Court TV nailed it. She sees through the smokescreen, and so do most former law enforcement officers, except one. Whatever, Jennifer Coffin Daffer. You sound like a tool with this post, when we all know that Julie from Court TV, despite being a former prosecutor, despite being an attorney like all the other news anchors on Court TV they are all attorneys. None of them have morals. Not one of them has morals. And we learned that especially through the Karen Reed case. Even Vinnie Politan himself. You know, Vinnie Politan is a glutton for views on YouTube. It's not enough that Vinnie Politan is like the #1 news anchor on Court TV and he gets hundreds of thousands of views just by being on Court TV. But then he has his own show on Court TV called Vinnie Politan Investigates. Like, he has his own fucking show. And I'm pretty sure he has another show on Court TV that he hosts. I'm saying Vinnie Politan has at least 2 separate shows on Court TV that he hosts all by himself on top of being a news anchor for Court TV. And then on top of that, Vinnie Politan has his own YouTube channel where he gets even more tens of thousands of views, hundreds of thousands of views sometimes. So I'm saying Vinnie Politan is a whore for the spotlight. He just can't get enough. It's not enough that he's on mainstream media making the big bucks and already getting all the views because that's the YouTube algorithm. YouTube algorithm pushes mainstream media. Therefore, YouTube algorithm pushes Vinnie Politan just because he's on Court TV. And in his own independent channel, in Vinnie Politan's own YouTube channel, he gets even tens of thousands of views. It's, to me, it's like he's hogging the airwaves in a way. He's hogging the streaming on YouTube. It's like, what do you want, Vinnie? You want us to just see your face every time we go on YouTube? Like, you want every video on YouTube to just be your fucking face? Again, I've lost a lot of respect for Court TV, especially through the Karen Reed trial, and especially Julie Grant. Julie Grant went from sympathizing with Karen Reed and Karen Reed supporters to saying Karen Reed's definitely guilty. And there was a video on Court TV where Julie Grant specifically says she definitely did it, referring to Karen Reed. I'll never forget it, guys. Julie Grant, before the trial began, said she definitely did it. And she was referring to Karen Reed, and that video was taken down by Court TV. How are you, as a lawyer, Julie Grant, going to say someone is guilty before the fucking trial even begins, before you're even able to see all the evidence? So, again, I've lost a lot of respect for anybody on Court TV. Vinnie Politan and Julie Grant especially. They can both... I'll shut up. I'm gonna read this over again. Julie Court TV nailed it. She sees through the smokescreen, and so do most former law enforcement officers except one. We talked below about the relationship between blogger Kearney and subject #Karen Reed, believed to have conspired with Kearney to intimidate and harass witnesses, which is illegal. Will her bond be revoked? Will she face additional charges? Did she wipe her phones as officers waited to seize them? What will the search of those phones reveal? Like, this is defamatory questioning. It's defamatory questioning when you don't have all the facts. Just like Julie Grant, it was defamatory for her to say Karen Reed definitely did this before the trial even began. And this person, Jennifer Coffin Daffer, is no different. These are defamatory questions when you don't have the evidence. But, you know, if Coffin Daffer knew her shit, she would have known that actually Karen Reed's cell phone had the least amount of suspicious activity. unlike members of law enforcement like Brian Albert and Brian Higgins and Jennifer McCabe, who's not a member of law enforcement, but she assisted law enforcement in covering this up. All of those individuals had suspicious activities on their cell phones, or they themselves suspiciously destroyed their cell phones. Brian Higgins in the most suspicious way of all. But Jennifer Coffindale wants to talk about what's illegal, which is illegal. Like, yeah, you know what else is illegal, Coffindaffer? Murdering people and then blaming someone else for it. That's pretty fucking illegal. But I don't see you talking about that. Next post that Aiden provides, also from Coffindaffer. The conspiracy between Karen Reed, her attorneys, and blogger Kearney to falsely accuse and to harass innocents has been appropriately put on the record in the attached document. Also, the 227 House Long to Die in Cold has been put to bed once and for all. See below. Jennifer Coffindaffer must be on someone's payroll because, again, she doesn't know her shit. Richard Green proved to the world that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m. in the morning on January 29th, 2022. 2022. Yeah. And who was it? Ian Whiffen? Prosecution side, dude who found, what was that one? ArtX? Yeah. Ian Whiffen, founder of ArtX, right? Supposed to be one of the top dudes in the industry, did not have the hashtags for the cell phone data or the computer forensics. Therefore, he could not verify that it was in fact the original data. He could not verify whether it had been manipulated or not, Jennifer Coffindaffer. So the only ones who could tell us that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m. Were on the defense side. And it was Richard Green and his team, not the prosecution. The prosecution very clearly omitted the hashtags so that Ian Whiffen and others could not do their job. But again, Karen Reed haters, they don't want to do what is right. They just want to be right. The post continues, I hope the judge sanctions Reed's defense counsel for a second time. Like, this is hateful speech. This is wishing ill upon people when you don't have your facts straight, when you don't even know the full picture. Like, I hope the judge punishes them again. That's really hateful. Again, coming from someone who doesn't have her facts straight. It continues, the nonsense is over. Let's move on to trial and be done with this dog and pony show. Hashtag John O'Keefe and his family and friends deserve justice. And that comes off as so disingenuous coming from you, Coffindaffer. It's so disingenuous for you to say that when you don't even have all your facts straight. Again, I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. If you truly want justice for John O'Keefe, then you follow the fucking evidence. You argue what you can prove. You don't argue what you want to be correct because you want to hate somebody, because you want to pin somebody and point the finger at somebody, because you love your cop friends so much that you can't see past their bullshit. True justice for John O'Keefe is looking at the evidence, looking at the facts, and knowing what the hell you're talking about, and realizing that Karen Reed didn't do this, and that actually the person or people who did this are still out there in Massachusetts, the state I live in. Somebody here or a group of people here are walking around in Massachusetts where I live, and they fucking killed John O'Keefe. And they're walking free, Jennifer Coffindaffer. And another post from Coffindaffer. Let me find the affidavit for you concerning the witness intimidation and harassment. Recall hashtag Karen Reed's phones. were seized in that case. We have pages of text between Reed and blogger Kearney. Please see my previous tweets. It's very concerning. You're not that concerned, Coffin Daffer. You're not that concerned when you can't even be bothered to know your shit before you post bullshit. I'm going to skip to the next page. Aidan Kearney's post continues. When I was in jail, Brian Tolley raided Karen Reed's house with a search warrant for her phone. Signed by Judge Peter Kropp, Brian Tolley presented a 34-page affidavit. It's supposed to be affidavit, explaining that he had spoken with two mentally unbalanced women with an axe to grind, Natalie Wawicki and the fake victim, and told them that I had previously, spoken with Karen Reed on the phone because apparently journalists are not allowed to speak with the subjects of their reporting in Nazi Norfolk County. You know what? I concur, Aidan Kearney. Norfolk County is definitely being run by Nazis. I stand behind that statement. It continues, based on this information, Tolley contacted Karen Reed's cell phone provider to get all of her records. He discovered that Reed and I spoke on the phone 189 times! ! Okay. On Wednesday, a newly released Massachusetts State Police affidavit alleged that Reed sent Kearney personal details about witnesses in the case, autopsy photographs, crime scene photographs. That seems highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Crime scene photographs, images of her car, and the 911 call made when O'Keefe's body was found. They allegedly communicated directly for more than 40 hours during 189 phone calls. Police also allege Reed and Kearney interacted via intermediaries and the Signal messaging app. It's photoshopped. Good stuff. I remember seeing this before. It's so stupid. It continues. Obviously, this was no big deal as it's not illegal to speak on the phone with a reporter, but the mainstream media bought it hook, line, and sinker, clutching their pearls about how new charges could be coming! ! Quote, this is a unique case, end quote, said Ken Mello, a special prosecutor brought in to handle allegations of witness intimidation. He says Reed could now, like Kearney, face witness intimidation charges. Quote, this is all part of an investigation regarding the intimidation of witnesses. So if the evidence shows there was, he said, that would be a criminal charge. Quote, this is a serious breach of court rules, end quote, NBC 10 Boston legal analyst Michael Coyne said. Remember Michael Coyne? He's the dean of the Massachusetts Law School I have had a love-hate relationship with, as NBC 10 Boston and Canton Confidential have relied on him heavily. They've relied on him heavily to report, to provide his legal analysis on this case. And to me, Michael Coyne has had inconsistent, contradictory arguments throughout the Karen Reed case. Okay, continuing. A murder defendant sending non-public information about the case to an influential blogger would be highly unusual, according to Coyne. Quote, that's an awfully significant turn of events and may well mean Miss Reed is likely going to face additional criminal charges before this case is over, end quote, he said. And if in fact Michael Coyne said that, I think he's out of bounds, and he's a lawyer. He should know that. There isn't anything wrong with someone sharing their information with a journalist. Journalists are permitted to gather whatever evidence they can, to gather the truth, whether the trial has begun or not. Really odd. If in fact Michael Coyne said this, it's not what a good lawyer would say. Next one. Tully flew to California to speak with Natalie, who didn't tell him anything that is actually useful to prove any conspiracy to commit witness intimidation occurred. Okay, she gave him all of the text messages between me and Natalie, in which Natalie was relaying messages from Karen. Tully thought some of these messages would make us look bad, including one where I asked her how they know Colin Albert was inside Brian Albert's house. I'm going to read it, zooming in. 51. On several occasions, Kearney questions Karen's defense theories. In one such case on April 23, 2023, Kearney does not understand how Karen knows Colin Albert was at 34 Fairview. When John O'Keefe arrived, Kearney sends the messages, quote, "Hey, need to talk to you ASAP," end quote. Quote, "It's really important for me to know how we know Colin was in the house, end quote. Natalie, as an intermediary, sent the message, quote, "And TB can't say the defense had a source that Colin was there," end quote. "It's important for us and TB," end quote. Kearney responded, quote, "Need to talk, emergency," end quote. And, quote, "Well, I'm starting to lose confidence Colin was in that house and I'm freaking out," end quote. Natalie sent the message, quote, "Brian and Nicole and Chris and Julie all testified he was there, but I can't send GJ testimony because it's sealed," end quote. Kearney continued to ask questions. Natalie replied, "She's signaling you," end quote. And Aiden wrote, "But what he didn't include was that they responded by showing me strong evidence that Colin Albert was inside the house, which he was. At one point, it shows me getting upset with them." So it continues providing the document. I'm going to read it from here. Natalie replied, quote, "She's signaling you," end quote, and "Check your signal," end quote. Kearney asks, "Who?" And Natalie responded, "Her." In a similar exchange on May 7th, Kearney wrote, skip to the next one. Kearney wrote, "Not gonna lie, this is getting old. I don't like the riddle. Put the clues together stuff. This isn't a board game. By now she knows that I can be trusted. What you told me mean that the 227 Google search makes no sense." So this is Aiden Kearney communicating with Natalie, and he's putting the pieces together. And he's realizing the 2:27 a.m. search makes no sense. And guys, it is a devastating realization. If you were following this case and that moment that you realize that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m., it is a devastating realization, because what does that mean? It means that she must have known that John O'Keefe was on the lawn dying. And instead of using her cell phone, which was in her hand while she was making that search, instead of using her cell phone to make a call for someone to bring John O'Keefe to the hospital to save his life, because again, remember, he was still alive. John O'Keefe was still alive when the ambulance picked him up. And instead of Jennifer McCabe using her cell phone to call somebody, call an ambulance to pick him up, she uses her cell phone to make sure that he's long and gone. He's a lost cause by the time the ambulance picks him up. She needed to know how long it would take for him to die in the cold before she called 911. And that's a devastating realization. And it doesn't matter how many times she denies it. It doesn't matter how many times she sticks her teeth out and growls at you in her own defense. She made that search, proven by the evidence. Irrefutable evidence. And again, that can only be psychopathy. That can only be evil. And it's devastating. It's devastating that Jennifer McCabe and the others, not just her, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Colin Albert, Brian Higgins, whoever else was inside the house, they all had the opportunity to mitigate the situation, and they did not. They were obviously trying to cover something up. They obviously did not want John O'Keefe to survive his wounds. And again, if you follow enough court cases, you can figure it out yourself. If you follow enough court cases, you can guess. Why would a suspect not want a victim to survive their wounds? So that the victim can't tell anybody who the suspect was, who did this to them. So that John O'Keefe could not survive and say, they did this to me. Who did this to you? And then he would provide the names. It is devastating. It is devastating that John O'Keefe suffered unnecessarily as a result of psychopaths. And in my opinion, he continues to suffer because there has yet to be any justice. I don't think John O'Keefe is at peace here. I don't think he's at peace. I think this all needs to become a full circle, and it's not yet. Because again, the people who really did this, they have yet to face any charges. Continuing to read. Tully thought it would make it look like I didn't believe in the conspiracy theory if he put one of my texts saying the 227 Google search makes no sense in a court document. But like everything the Commonwealth has submitted, in my case, this quote is completely out of context. Absolutely. I agree. I get what Aiden's saying. He's saying totally attempted to make it seem like even Aiden Kearney thought the 2:27 a.m. didn't make sense. See? But it's an obfuscation of the argument, as I keep saying. It's what manipulators do. They take part of the truth and they sprinkle it with lies. And that's exactly what they tried to do with Aiden. Continuing to read. This quote is completely out of context. I was getting frustrated going through Natalie by May 7th because there was no need for her anymore, which is why I began speaking directly with Karen shortly after that. At the time, I didn't know about Lucky Loughran, and thus was under the assumption that John's body was placed outside before 2:27 a.m. Yeah, because if you guys remember, Lucky Loughran was the snowplow driver, and Lucky said he didn't see the body. He didn't see the body outside during the hours that Lucky was passing through with the snowplow. And there was even an instance that Lucky could not pass through with the snowplow because Brian Albert's Ford Edge was parked on the street, which again is not something Brian Albert would have ever done during a fucking snowstorm. Lucky Loughran being the snowplow driver who had gone up and down Fairview for years and knew the Alberts for years. So Aiden Kearney is saying he knew that John O'Keefe's body could not have been outside before 2:27 a.m. based on Lucky Loughran's testimony. And I, like many others, believe Lucky Loughran's testimony was credible. Okay, continuing to read. All texts like this show was that I didn't take anything Karen or Natalie said at face value and questioned everything looking for evidence. Yeah. Yeah, that's what a true journalist does. You don't ever take things at face value. You look into shit yourself and you verify yourself. And if you can't verify it, then certainly don't try to defame people when you don't have all the facts. Continuing to read, the defense always brought receipts. It's true. The defense always brought receipts. It's so true. Unlike the prosecution, right? The prosecution not only failed to bring receipts most of the time, but they omitted receipts. They omitted and manipulated evidence. And they botched their own timeline. You know, such a sloppy fucking case the prosecution had with the help of the MSP, the Massachusetts State Police. All of them, just sloppy ass, crooked people. Continuing to read. Tolley also pointed out how Natalie revealed that I went out for, quote, lunch with Karen's lawyers after a May 3rd hearing. And again, like, I'm going to keep reading, but again, who cares? Aidan Kearney is a fucking journalist. Who the fuck cares? Like, it's so fucking weird. Why aren't they talking about the tea party Jennifer McCabe had with the state police and the Alberts and the McCabes and Higgins at her house? Why aren't they talking about that? That's pretty fucking suspicious. Why weren't they all inside of a police investigation room, separated, right? Anyway, continuing to read. 53, Natalie recalled Kearney being invited to have lunch with Karen and her defense attorneys, including Alan Jackson and David Yannetti, after the May 3rd, 2023 court date. A check of the phone revealed one of the first text messages to Kearney. Natalie stated, quote, Karen and her team will likely be typo, convening at the Omni Seaport after the May 3rd hearing, end quote. Kearney responded, quote, I'd be happy to meet up with them, end quote. On April 28, Natalie sent Kearney the message, quote, Turtle can meet with Alan on Tuesday, May 3rd, perhaps, end quote. Natalie stated that she spoke with Kearney following the May 3rd court hearing. Kearney stated he was nervous to attend lunch with Karen and her attorneys as he would feel out of place. He would feel out of place. Aw. Anyway, it's like, I don't think he's out of place. I don't think he's out of place at all. Anyway, okay, continuing. Natalie reassured Kearney he was welcome and stated it was a good opportunity for him. Kearney agreed and stated he was going to attend the lunch. Kearney sent Natalie a text message at 6:28 p.m. stating, quote, we had a great time, end quote. Natalie would later mention Kearney having a, quote, nice time, end quote, at the lunch. It should be noted that at all times Natalie was in California, did not attend any Reed court dates, and was relaying messages from Karen to Kearney. 54, on May 6th, Kearney texted Natalie, quote, can I see the hairs she showed me in person, end quote. What? Emphasis added. Natalie then sent Kearney 2 pictures of what appears to be a hair next to a measuring tape often used by CSS when documenting evidence. Natalie then sent the message, quote, supposedly the same hair, end quote. These photographs are not part of any public filings. And continuing with Aidan's post, except there was no meal of food consumed. Natalie told me to go there. I briefly met Karen and Alan Jackson, and then I went home. The fact that they think this is worth investigating, but the Ford Edge parked outside of Brian Albert's house isn't, really tells you everything you need to know. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny that he brings up the Ford Edge right as I brought it up. And I'm reading this for the first time with you guys. It's what I always do when I'm reading things and making videos. I read them for the first time so that my reaction and my response to them is more genuine and authentic. And so I just thought it was funny that I brought up the Ford Edge, and so did Aidan. Okay, continuing to read. The fact that they think this is worth investigating, but the Ford Edge parked outside of Brian Albert's house isn't, really tells you everything you need to know about how corrupt the state police are. Absolutely. Their corruption seems to have no bounds. It's limitless how corrupt they are. Just an extremely evil entity, in my observation. Okay, continuing. Tully also seems to think it's a scandal that I previously denied ever speaking with Karen Reed. But just to, I'm gonna keep reading, but just to say, like, because the cops, not, the cops love catching you in the lie, because it's illegal to lie to a cop. A cop can lie to you. They're legally permitted to lie to you, and nothing will ever happen to them. But if you lie to a cop, it's a double standard. You're fucked if you lie to a cop. And so they love to point out when people have lied, and they made the attempt here to say that Aiden lied, while they completely overlook all of the lies the Alberts and the McCabe's and Higgins stated. Completely overlook all those lies. The Karen Reed case was a case against the outcasts, a case against the scapegoats, Aiden Kearney and Karen Reed. They were ousted, and law enforcement, members of law enforcement, targeted them as being outsiders. And yet, Aiden Kearney and Karen Reed were the ones with the least suspicious actions throughout all of this. Continuing to read, 57. In public settings, Kearney and the attorneys for Karen Reed have denied communicating or mischaracterized the nature of their communication. On September 27, 2023, Boston Magazine published an article about the homicide of John O'Keefe and Karen Reed's defense. For the article, the author interviewed Karen, her attorneys, and Aiden Kearney. The article describes Kearney's involvement in the case from April through the July 25th court date. After describing how the author interviewed Kearney at his residence, the article states, quote, both Kearney and Reed's defense team say they have never been in contact with one another, end quote. On October 20, 2023, an X account, formerly Twitter, associated with David Yannetti at Boston Defender, posted a response to another post alleging Yannetti, quote, tipped off, end quote, Kearney about the story. The post in part reads, quote, he, Kearney, and I never communicated until after his first piece on the hashtag Karen Reed case, end quote. Number 58, I observed text messages between Natalie and Kearney containing discussion about an investigation being conducted by the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office. On one such occasion, in an April 23 message sent by Natalie to Kearney, quote, not public, the feds have been involved longer than anyone is likely guessing, end quote. On April 28, Natalie sends Kearney the following message, quote, but I don't understand why he doesn't mention more that the feds are involved. The first assistant U.S. attorney, they don't shoot and miss. They have a case and way more evidence than we do. I know this is for a fact. Jen McCabe testifies this coming week. I'm not sure about the others, end quote. Yeah. I'm still waiting on the feds to do the right thing here too, but we all saw what they did with Sandra Birchmore, right? They didn't do a damn thing for Sandra Birchmore until Sandra Birchmore's family paid for a secondary pathologist to do the medical examination. And then the feds stepped in. The feds wouldn't do it on their own. Take their sweet ass time. Okay, continuing. Number 64, on an August 29, 2023 YouTube video, EP 609, 17-minute mark, Kearney denies having ever spoken to Karen Reed. He described how a follower of his blog connected him with a friend of Karen Reed's, which is where he receives his information. He described the relationship with Karen's friend as follows. Quote, "That's what journalists do. They talk to sources. Okay, Karen Reed is allowed to have friends, and they are allowed to talk to me. That doesn't mean I'm communicating with her or her lawyers. I tried friend requesting Karen Reed, and it came back rejected. But she's not stupid, clearly. I've asked her friend, obviously asked, can I talk to Karen Reed? Can I talk to her? And the answer is no. So what am I going to do?" End quote. Number 65. On October 30th, 2023, Kearney appeared on a live YouTube show, quote, "The New Bedford Live," end quote. At the 37-minute mark, Kearney is asked if he has, quote, "ever met Karen Reed," end quote. Kearney responded, quote, "I've seen her in court. I've met her family. I talked to them. Not every day or anything like that, but I've had many pleasant conversations with them. But Karen likes to keep a distance, I think, between herself and me simply because they're after her. For one thing, they're after her. And number two, it's just, affects my professional reputation if she's my BFF or something like that. But I fully support her. I think after this is all over, her and I will be friends. But for now, it's about business," end quote. Yeah. Number 66. Several text exchanges suggest Kearney and Karen communicated directly without Natalie acting as an intermediary. These messages are in addition to the previously mentioned messages asking Kearney to check his, quote, "signal," end quote. Natalie stated she never communicated with Kearney on the Signal app, and those text messages were informing Kearney that Karen was sending him messages directly on the Signal app. Number 67. One exchange on May 6th involves Kearney disbelieving a portion of Karen's defense and is frustrated. He texted Natalie that he tried calling, quote, "her," end quote, Karen. Natalie asks 15 minutes later, quote, "Are you guys on the phone now?" end quote, and Kearney responds, quote, "Yes," end quote. And 45 minutes later, quote, "We're still talking," end quote. Natalie stated she believed Kearney and Reed spoke on the phone at length during this time. I get where Aiden's coming from. I get where he's coming from. It's like who the fuck cares? He's a journalist. What? Look at all this like wasted paper, wasted court filing. Look at this journalist being a journalist. Ooh, so spooky, so suspicious. Like, shut the fuck up. All right, continuing to read. Number 68. In another such exchange on May 19, Kearney and Natalie are exchanging messages about whether Kearney should write about a certain topic. Natalie sent the message, quote, "Let me run it by her. My bet is she says yes," end quote. The next message sent by Natalie, acting as an intermediary for Karen, is as follows, quote, "Yeah, he already asked me, but it's his call," end quote. Next one. Number 69. Karen Reed has been interviewed by other media outlets, including ABC's Nightline and NBC's Dateline. She was interviewed by a reporter from Boston Magazine. She has not acknowledged speaking with Kearney. Furthermore, she took steps to provide Kearney non-public information while appearing to be distant, including using an intermediary, controlling what he can publish publicly, and using a messaging application outside of traditional text messaging. Stupid. Are you serious? Come on. Yeah. Like perfect strangers are just going to give each other their cell phone numbers. Like, ooh, application outside of traditional text messaging. Like no. People use messaging apps all the time. There are so many. There are so many to choose from. You've got Messenger, you've got WhatsApp, you've got Signal, you've got Google Meet. Like, virtually, you don't need a fucking cell phone number these days. There's nothing suspicious about it. Number 70. Following a falling out between Natalie and Karen in June 2023, the text message frequency dramatically dropped. Natalie was no longer sending Kearney information related to the homicide after mid-June. On June 23rd, Natalie asked Kearney to talk to Karen about her being mad at Natalie. Kearney responded that he does not want to play mediator and be in the middle, which would be another insinuation Kearney and Karen communicate directly. Not really. That's speculation. Like, not to me. That's kind of pushing it. Because Aiden doesn't want to be caught in the middle of Natalie and Karen's drama. It's like definitely would be another insinuation Kearney and Karen communicate directly. Like, I get it, but I'm also like, they're two entirely different avenues, two entirely different logic roots, that don't necessarily meet at the end together. It's just, to me, they're grasping at straws, kind of desperate arguments here. It continues. Aiden continues in the post. Karen Reed was an anonymous source whose anonymity I was protecting. It's also not a crime to not be completely forthright with Gretchen Voss. They also reported that I had spoken with Karen's attorneys after I wrote my first article on the Karen Reed case. Number 72. A check of the phone records from Kearney's phone revealed communication with cell phones associated with David Unetti and Alan Jackson. A phone number ending in 5359 was checked through LexisNexis, a commercially available database, and was associated with David Unetti. The 5359 phone number communicates with Kearney's two phones 29 times, including 9 times from April 20 to May 2nd. A phone number ending in 0555 was checked through LexisNexis and was associated with Alan Jackson. The 0555 phone number communicates with Kearney's two phones 29 times, including 3 times from April 20 to May 1st. Again, if the prosecution and the so-called detectives, so-called law enforcement, put this much effort into saying how many times Brian Albert called Brian Higgins, how many times Jennifer McCabe called Brian Albert, how many times Nicole Albert and Jennifer McCabe communicated, or how all of them were in a group chat. Like if the prosecution put that much effort into the McCabes and the Alberts and Higgins, Karen Reed would have never gone to trial. Karen Reed would have never gone to trial. There would be no Karen Reed supporters because the true culprits would have been held responsible. In a perfect world, I guess, it's too much to ask for in the state of Massachusetts, that kind of shit only happens in a perfect world. When people are in their positions of law enforcement and they're actually enforcing the law the way it was intended. But who am I? What do I know? Number 73. On October 10, 2023, Aiden Kearney was arrested pursuant to several arrest warrants issued out of Stoughton District Court. He was arraigned in Stoughton, D.C. on the same date, which was widely reported by local media. On October 12th, 2023, Natalie received a call on her cell phone from 213-688-0460, which is the main office phone number for Worksman, Jackson, and Quinn, the California law firm of Alan Jackson. Natalie stated she did not answer the call, nor did she return the call. She stated she had never spoken to Alan Jackson, David Unetti, or any other attorney representing Karen in Commonwealth versus Reed prior to October 12th or since. Aiden continues in his post, thus proving that I was not hired by the defense to write favorable things about Karen Reed, unlike Jennifer Coffin-Daffer and Gretchen Valls, who were bribed with David Traub burgers because the Commonwealth needed someone in the media to say nice things about them. I concur, and I didn't just get it from Coffin-Daffer and the other fools. So many people... again, especially during the live chats while the trial was going on, there were so many people. It seemed like I wouldn't put it past the Commonwealth to pay for like social media users to go online and be trolls against Karen Reed and to push the prosecution's narrative. It seemed that way from what I witnessed myself, just being in the live chats. I saw so many people who hated Karen Reed repeating the same thing, almost like they were given a memo. And again, they were still vastly outnumbered by the Karen Reed supporters. And again, the polls that I observed were proof of that. It didn't matter what YouTube channel was polling. Anywhere from 80 to 90% of people following the trial said Karen Reed was not guilty. And the trolls online, they were uneducated. They didn't have their facts straight. And a lot of them were saying the same thing. And it's like I couldn't help but feel like, are they being paid to say these things? And why is it that they are all basically repeating the same thing? It's kind of like mainstream media. It's just like mainstream media. Sometimes you can tell when the government or big pharma or big science is lying to you. Just look at just go to all the mainstream media channels, and if they're all saying the same thing, it's probably a lie. Just like the trolls in the Karen Reed case. Okay, continuing with Aiden's words, the fake victim had basically nothing of interest to offer Tully, but she really wanted me to go to jail, so she told him what Natalie had already told him. I spoke with Karen Reed on the phone. I'm going to see if I can skip to the next one. Yeah. Zooming in. Number 77. In the beginning of their relationship, Kearney stated he was close with Karen Reed's family. He would later state to Jane that he speaks with Karen Reed every day. Jane showed me a screenshot that Kearney allegedly sent her showing multiple calls on a certain day that showed, quote, Karen Reed, signal audio, end quote. In the call log, Kearney told Jane that there was an intermediary between Kearney and Reed, a woman by the name of Natalie. Kearney stated Natalie and Reed were angry with each other. Kearney stated to Jane that he then began talking to Reed directly. Number 78. Jane stated Kearney and Reed communicate using the Signal app because it is encrypted. Jane stated she does not communicate with Kearney using the Signal app. Jane stated Kearney, quote, runs everything by Karen, end quote, meaning all of the blog posts and social media content is approved by Reed prior to Kearney publishing. Just pulling away, I doubt Karen Reed even had the fucking time to approve all of Aiden's shit. Like, it just seems so outlandish. I doubt it. And I doubt Aiden Kearney would be bombarding Karen Reed with this shit, like, while she's going through all this. I'm just saying it seems uncharacteristic of either Aiden Kearney or Karen Reed. Continuing to read, Kearney described Reed as difficult, controlling, and gets irritated with him. Jane stated Kearney showed her material related to the investigation of the homicide of John O'Keefe, including the 911 call and cruiser video footage before it was, quote, leaked, end quote, on social media. On December 1st, 2023, Kearney posted a live YouTube video entitled Karen Read Case. That's a typo. It should just be titled. Sorry. Karen Read Case, Jen McCabe, 911 tape breakdown, end quote. The audio is, in fact, a voicemail recovered by investigators from John O'Keefe's phone. After that, captures Jen McCabe calling 911 from a different phone, reporting finding O'Keefe unresponsive. O'Keefe's phone was recovered by first responders on January 29, 2022. It is reasonable to assume only the Commonwealth and Reed's attorneys are in possession of the audio file. Aidan Kearney continues. Fake victim also told Tolley that the Reed family bribed me with a free Lexus. With a free Lexus. Okay. Whatever. Whatever. Stupid. All right. Prompting Tolley to pull my records from Lexus and TD Bank. They went through all my records and found out that I never took a penny from anyone on the defense team, but because I was so successful, I could afford a nicer car than he's ever had. It's a burn. The burn to Tolley. But again, if Tolley looked into the McCabes and the Alberts and Higgins as much as he looked into Aidan Kearney and Karen Read would have never gone to trial. Just Tolley's wasting taxpayer money, by the by, just by the way. He's wasting resources to look into people for nonsense. Okay, number 79. Jane described one instance where Reed controlled what Kearney would publish. Kearney wanted to release the Canton police cruiser video footage he had obtained from Reed. Kearney asked Reed if he could publish the video on his Turtle Boy platform. Jane stated Reed said no to the request. Kearney was frustrated and contacted one of Reed's defense attorneys, Alan Jackson. Jackson approved the release of the video. Reed later found out about Kearney going to Jackson and was angry. During a November 28, 2023 YouTube live video, Kearney discussed the existence of video from cameras affixed to the Canton police cruisers who responded to the scene, including the names of the officers whose cruisers had video. 2 hour 18-minute mark. Number 80. Jane stated different sources of financial benefit for Kearney and his partners. Jane stated Kearney is, quote, doing well, end quote, with donations. Kearney had alluded to the fact that he did not pay for a Lexus SUV he recently acquired. Kearney made statements similar to, quote, if my frugal mother ever found out I paid for the Lexus, she would be mad, end quote. To be fair, that does sound like something Aidan would say, but it's okay. And quote, even I didn't pay for it. What's wrong with that? End quote. A check of RMV records revealed the Lexus was purchased in the end of June 2023. Further records revealed the vehicle was paid in full using a personal check. Wow. And Lexus vehicles are not cheap. Toyota vehicles are not cheap, damn it. So the luxury line from Toyota, Lexus, is even more expensive. So anyway, Aidan continues, how's that feel, Tully? Fake victim also made a complete lie that Karen Read spoke directly with Josh Levy. Number 81. Jane stated she was told by Kearney that Reed's attorneys were working with the U.S. Attorney's Office, specifically acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts, Josh Levy. Kearney would talk a lot about the federal grand jury and Levy with Jane. Jane stated Karen Reed was interviewed by federal law enforcement. Jane also shared other comments Kearney learned from Reed that are corroborated by other information known to this affiant. I don't know why I said affidavit. It starts out the same way. Okay, Aiden continues in the blog. I never told her that because it never happened. She just made it up because she's mad that she got dumped. Okay. All right. Tolley said that these facts were enough to establish probable cause that Karen Reed conspired to commit witness intimidation of the McAlberts. Okay, I'm going to read this. Let's see if I can skip to the next one. Okay. Number 83. Based upon the foregoing facts, there is probable cause to believe that Karen Reed, DOB 22680, committed a violation of Massachusetts general laws, Chapter 268, Section 13B, witness interference. Matthew McCabe, Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, Christopher Albert, Colin Albert, Juliana Nagel, Michael Proctor, and Elizabeth Proctor. It's so funny how like all those people are suspicious as fuck, but they're presented here as victims. You know. And again, that's what abusers and liars do. They flip the script, they blame shift, and you point out something that they are doing that's fucked up, and they blame shift and they say, actually I did this because of you, or actually like you're the one that is the problem. And that's exactly what happened to Karen Reed. She tried to point out who were the real suspects, and they all ganged up on her. She is the actual victim here, along with John O'Keefe and Karen Reed's family and John O'Keefe's family. They are all the real victims here, while the McCabes and the Alberts and the state troopers are the real culprits. All right, continuing. Which reads, quote, whoever willfully, either directly or indirectly, threatens, attempts, or causes physical, emotional, or economic injury or property damage to, conveys a gift, offer, or promise of anything of value to, misleads, intimidates, or harasses another person who is A, witness or potential witness, B, person who is or was aware of information, records, documents, or objects that relate to a violation of a criminal law or a violation of conditions of probation, parole, bail, or other court order. C, judge, juror, grand juror, attorney, victim, witness, advocate, police officer, correction officer, federal agent, investigator, clerk, court officer, court reporter, court interpreter, probation officer, or parole officer. D, person who is or was attending, or a person who had made known an intention to attend a proceeding described in this section. Or E, family member of a person described in this section. And Aiden continues, Tolley believed there, quote, will be, end quote, evidence on Karen Reed's phone that she conspired to commit witness intimidation. Number 84. Based upon the foregoing facts, there is probable cause to believe Karen Reed, date of birth 2/26/80. Yeah, I just want to say Karen Reed has my older sister's birthday. Not the year, but my older sister was also born February 26th, Pisces. Anyway, I think that's interesting. Okay. And Karen Reed looks great for her age. All right, I'm continuing. committed a violation of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 274, Section 7, conspiracy to commit intimidation of a witness by entering into an agreement with Aidan Kearney by providing information, photography, material relative to her criminal defense, and editorial oversight of blog posts and videos intended to harass, intimidate, and cause emotional harm. Move to the next one to read 85. The information provided by Natalie Wawicki Berschneider, what a name, and Jane outlines the close communication between Kearney and Reed. The communication has continued after Kearney was arrested and arraigned on charges of intimidation of a witness. Reed feeding Kearney information was not only providing her defense theory, as she did with the national news outlets. Reed and her attorneys and Kearney have publicly mischaracterized their relationship. The information fed to Kearney was later cited by Reed's defense counsel in a written motion. Kearney's statements of jury influence and preventing the case from reaching trial are clear motivation. Kearney and Reed are conspiring to commit witness intimidation. As the witness intimidation statute allows, Karen Reed has indirectly intimidated and harassed the witnesses named in this affidavit. Again, that's a far stretch. Like, if we read all the, like I read all the numbers so far, the ones that Aidan provided, and so far, that's the only argument they have. Indirect intimidation, meaning it be like because Karen Reed wasn't doing it directly, she did it through her communication with Aidan Kearney. And yet, what was that communication? It wasn't very much, was it? Just again, wasting resources. It's a non-issue. This whole thing is a waste of my breath. It's a non-issue. But it's a court document. It's a court filing, as are many other documents in the Karen Reed case on the prosecution side. Just a lot of non-issues, a lot of fakery, smoke and mirrors. Number 86, evidence of such crimes will be found on mobile electronic devices used by Reed to communicate, harass, intimidate, and receive information. Number 87, on December 23, 2023, I applied for and was granted a search warrant out of Norfolk Superior Court, provides the case number, to seize any cell phone presumably used by Karen Reed. Efforts to Efforts to locate Reed within the 7 days of issuance of the search warrant were unsuccessful. Well, they couldn't find her, so they couldn't serve her the search warrant. Okay, within the 7 days anyway. Number 99. Based on all the above, there is probable cause to believe the data held within cell phones used by Karen Reed will contain evidence of witness intimidation and conspiracy. That cell phone data has been used as means of committing a crime and is evidence of criminal activity. Bullshit. Number 100. The evidence for which probable cause exists includes A. Data evidencing ownership, custody, or control, electronic evidence in items. Sorry, I don't know why it's... I'll read that again. Okay. Or controlled electronic evidence items, including activation date, email accounts, billing records, social media account information, calendars, alerts, reminders, notes, text messages, and pictures or videos from April 1st, 2023 through and including date of seizure. B. Data evidencing dissemination of data depicting evidence of intimidation of a witness, of any witness or family members of a witness involved in murder of John O'Keefe, to include but not limited to Matthew McCabe, Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, Christopher Albert, Colin Albert, Juliana Albert, Michael Proctor, and Elizabeth Proctor from April 18, 2023 to date of seizure. Letter C. data evidencing the ongoing conspiracy with Aidan Kearney to intimidate witnesses. Going to the next page. Aidan continues in his post. Not, quote, could be, end quote. He said, quote, will be, end quote, as in he guaranteed it, except there wasn't a single shred of evidence from Karen's phone presented to the grand jury. Nothing in my bank records, her JetBlue records, or any of the records for Lexus were even mentioned once. It was all a giant waste of time. Like I said, guys, pulling away, like I said, like everything I just fucking read was a non-issue, a waste of fucking time and resources. A waste of the grand jury's time. Just like the Karen Read case itself, the trial itself was a waste of everybody's fucking time because the people who killed John O'Keefe never were put on trial. They were involved during trial, but they were never accused. They never had to prove themselves to the jury while being accused. A complete waste of time. Continuing to read. Giant waste of time, and Karen Read had her property stolen from her by the same people who framed her for murder. Exactly. Atrocity after atrocity in this entire Karen Read ordeal. And I won't stop saying it. People, law schools need to study the fuck out of this case. They need to study and analyze the actions of every single member of law enforcement. You know, they all broke bad. They are all fucking crooked. And these court filings are all fucking crooked. Okay, continuing to read. At the grand jury on March 27, Ken Mello's only witness was Brian Tully. He basically just repeated everything you, Natalie, and the fake victim told him, and a grand jury said this wasn't enough to charge her. The old saying says that you can indict a ham sandwich, but all Tully had to work with was a bunch of baloney. Yeah. And thank goodness the grand jury used their heads. Like a jury is supposed to do. They're supposed to think it through, analyze everything, and think it through and come to as accurate of a conclusion as you possibly can. And if you can't come to an accurate and provable conclusion, then you don't have a conclusion, and the person is not guilty. Continuing to read, but the most scandalous part is that on May 10, Adam Lally filed a motion to prevent me from being in the courtroom for Karen Read's trial. And his argument was that Read had conspired with me to commit witness intimidation against witnesses against her. Yeah, because Adam Lally is a shithead. And it provides the court document. Docket number, Commonwealth versus Karen Read. Commonwealth's motion to exclude an individual charged with witness intimidation in connection with this case from the courtroom during the testimony of certain witnesses. Now comes the Commonwealth and moves that this court exclude Aidan Kearney from the courtroom during portion of the ongoing criminal trial of Karen Read. On December 20, 2023, Kearney was indicted by a Norfolk County grand jury for 16 criminal charges related to allegations of his intimidation of a witness who will be called to testify at this trial. See docket number, as extensively detailed in the Commonwealth's opposition to defendant's motion for sanction and for disqualification of the Norfolk County District Attorney. Docket entry paper number. The Commonwealth asserts that the defendant and her counsel colluded with, directed, and encouraged Kearney to attack witnesses to embarrass, intimidate, and deter those witnesses from testifying in this trial. Kearney publicly confirmed that the motivation of his actions were to prevent this case from ever going to trial. In the time leading up to trial, Kearney repeatedly publicly insulted and disparaged the prosecution, the trial judge, witnesses, and the victim's family who are in attendance at the trial. Yeah, I mean, using that logic, Adam Lally, using that logic, all the people who disparaged and insulted Karen Read, they were still allowed to sit there right next to Karen Read. Paul O'Keefe, especially. You didn't prevent him from sitting right next to Karen Read, within arm's reach of Karen Read. Preferential treatment, Adam Lally. Adam Lally is a dick. Continuing to read, these are Aidan Kearney's words. Keep in mind, this was 6 weeks after he became aware that a grand jury chose not to indict Karen Read for conspiracy to commit witness. Yeah, I was picking up on that. Adam Lally is saying all this after the grand jury decided that there wasn't enough evidence to charge Karen Read with conspiring with Aidan Kearney and committing witness intimidation. Adam Lally filed this bullshit motion after the grand jury determined that there wasn't enough evidence to say Karen Read was committing witness intimidation with Aidan Kearney. Just bullshit. Okay, grand jury chose not to indict Karen Read for conspiracy to commit witness intimidation, yet he still intentionally represented to the court that Read had conspired to commit this crime in order to prevent an award-winning journalist from doing his job. You know, Aidan Kearney. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. It's just funny how he props himself up sometimes. Okay. An award-winning journalist from doing his job inside the court. In a non-corrupt county, this would be a really big deal, but Lally knows that he works in Norfolk County, where there are no consequences for blatantly lying in court in order to kick a journalist out of a courtroom. Yeah. Aidan Kearney is not wrong. There isn't one thing Aidan Kearney wrote in this entire blog that is a lie. It's all accurate. It was, and I have said this, it was a perfect storm of corrupt people in positions of power. Corrupt people in positions of power who abused their power left and right. And they were all in cahoots. It is so clear they were all in cahoots. Norfolk County. Just disgusting. And again, for news networks like Canton Confidential to not even see that, to not even talk about that. To me, they are corruption sympathizers. The corruption sympathizers. They don't actually care that the corruption happened. They're hardly looking into it. But they're commenting on this case as if they know what's going on. You do not know what is going on in the Karen Read case if you're not talking about the blatant, excessive abundance of corruption. Anyway, thank you, Aidan Kearney, for yet another revealing post. Again, I will leave the link in the description below. Thank you for watching.